Hello again, TBD fam. It's your boy Chris here, coming back to you once again with a little bit of Helldivers 2. Now, for those of you who have been watching the streams recently, you may have been hearing a lot of my sentiment around the latest patch for the game and just how positive I am about it. I think it's been fantastic. I think the updates and the new missions as well have all been great. The devs are really doing a fantastic job with the game at the moment. Certainly if you haven't played Helldivers in a bit, or perhaps you went off because of the bugs and the balance issues, I mean, wow, the game's in a much different state right now compared to what it was in about a month ago. So definitely consider going back and checking it out if you've been absent for a while. The game is it's popping off at the moment. That being said, I still think there's a lot of room for improvement on a lot of the primary weapons and support weapons in the game. Now, if you've checked my channel, you might have seen that I went over all of the stratagems the other day in a quick sort of impromptu video. It's not quite like this where I've edited it and added some cool clips and stuff. No, it's just a really quick something that I put up. I just wanted to get my thoughts out there. And this is kind of a follow-on from that. It's going to discuss all of the primary weapons, all of the secondary weapons, the throwing weapons, and then finally I'm going to talk about all of the stratagem support weapons. So if you want to know my thoughts on those, how I would redesign them or rebalance them, change them, or perhaps even alter certain things about the game itself in order to make those weapons more effective, then yeah, this is the video for you. Hopefully you enjoy it. It's quite a long one and I go into a lot of depth. So yeah, if you like it, hit the like button and leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think about Helldivers 2 at the moment. What the hell? Oh, it's Beyblade! Tease brewing. What would I like to see buffed in the next patch? I've already put my suggestion on Twitter to the devs on how to improve this thing. Do you remember do you remember I was talking about how I had the idea where when you fire this thing normally, it does like 200 damage, kind of like the Scorcher. So you charge it a little bit and it will do 200. And then if you you make a window, like a quarter of a second window, where it will do like 550 damage. And then if you miss that window to let go of the trigger, it does 350 damage. So you overcharge it. So it ends up being like a skill-based weapon. I was thinking, yeah, and you could have like a little controller vibrate on the thing to let you know when it's like perfectly charged. So, you know, like the true charge slash on the greatsword, where if you overcharge it, you get less. I'd love to see that implemented onto this weapon. Scorch is fine. I don't think that needs a buff. Sickle, I don't actually think Sickle needs a buff at the moment, but if you buff all the assault rifles, it definitely will do. So, given that I want all the assault rifles buffed, I think maybe bring this up to like 70 damage afterwards. For now, it's fine as the meta, like, you know, as things go, it's good, but it'll get outclassed if you buff the assault rifles. I actually personally prefer the tenderizer to this in terms of its stopping power at the moment on some enemies, but this thing's still pretty good. Fire rate's nice. Obviously, the damage is not great, but I think if you made this like the weakest damage assault rifle with a high fire rate, it would be fine. Las Scythe, in the next patch, I would like to see this get a bit more of a buff. Yeah. Maybe bring it up to 400 damage per second, see how that does. Because I'd also like to see the stratagem for the laser maybe get a little bit of an increased damage. Let it deal with dropships as well, because at the moment, it's a big issue that you can't run it on bots as much just because of dropships, because otherwise you don't have an option to deal with them unless you bring the Dominator. Because that's your only other choice, right? Arc 12 Blitzer, yeah, I think honestly just give this a fire rate increase, and then when they fix the lightning damage, so that it actually targets enemies that you're aiming at, that'll probably make this thing really freaking good. Just a little bit of a fire rate, like I suggested before, maybe bring it up to 60. If you make it 80 like the other shotguns, I don't think that's going to be crazy. I think if you make it 80 like the other shotguns, that's probably a good thing, because I would like to see the pump action shotguns buffed anyway. Plasma Punisher, it's really solid at the moment. The one thing that still bugs me is it takes 4 shots to kill a lot of Devastators. And you only get 8 in the mag, so you can kill 2 Devastators, and it's like, unless they're standing really close to each other, you're only going to kill 1 at a time. That's a lot for this thing. I actually think if you made it a 3-hit kill, you can get some interesting team play dynamics because you kill 2.5 Devastators then. Because you won't necessarily get the third one. So you got to pick out your sidearm and finish it off. I think that would be better. I think make it a 3-shot kill. So again, maybe bring the damage up to 325. I think that would do it, right? That might even let you get a 2-shot headshot kill with this thing. Which, getting headshots with that thing is not easy. So, sure, why not reward the player for it? Eruptor, I know they're fixing the shrapnel. My suggestion was, if you take this weapon, you buff the damage a little bit more so that it can one-shot Devastators. Because I think that's fine. It's got slow travel speed, very slow rate of fire, long reload. So make it one-shot Devastators. I'm talking Rocket Devastators, regular Devastators, and Shield Devastators. If you hit them in the body, it should be a one-shot. And then my idea was, instead of adding shrapnel, it's called the Eruptor. Make it erupt little bomb pods, like cluster bomb pods, and they explode around. Like in a very, you know, like the airburst launcher, imagine that but on a much smaller scale. So it's only got maybe like a 3 or 4 meter radius where it will drop them out. And that could be kind of cool because then you do a little bit of collateral damage to nearby enemies. Maybe you kill some of the smaller enemies with it as well. I think that would make this thing really freaking good. And that way you don't have to worry about bringing the shrapnel back. It's not going to one-shot charges anymore, so you won't have that issue. I think that would be a pretty big deal. Dominator, absolutely perfect as it is right now. Crossbow, I mean, I love it. It's got high utility. It's very good on bile spewers, nurses. Yeah, I mean, you could maybe up the capacity a little bit. It's perhaps my only criticism. The capacity is very low. Like, the fact that it has the same capacity of this to me is a bit, yeah. You could maybe bring it up to 8. I don't think that would harm it. It wouldn't make it OP. It's good at the moment, though. I'd definitely put this in A tier. It's bordering on S. I think if you give it an 8 capacity, it becomes S tier. I love this weapon. Best weapon on the bugs for me at the moment, still. Depending on your loadout, it's the best. Sometimes this will be better, sometimes this will be better. Depends on what you're fighting, but for the most part, it's incredible. My idea for this is you up the fire rate. The damage is okay. You could maybe bring it up to 200 just to make it a round number. It's the only weapon in the game that doesn't have a round number, so... Yeah, maybe make it 200 just for... like, aesthetics on the stat sheet. It's not going to make that much of a difference. But the fire rate should be higher. Bring that fire rate up to like 400, 450. Give it some mad recoil. I want it to be like that. It should be like a machine gun shotgun. Because we don't have a machine gun shotgun. These are automatic, semi-auto, but they're not that fast. You know, they shoot pretty slow. This thing should be a bit faster. I think it'd be kind of cool. Yeah. 400, 450 fire rate on this. I think then it kind of stands out a bit more. Might consider using it a little bit more as well. The breaker, just give it its 16 capacity back. It was fine. Like, in retrospect, I think everyone's realized this thing wasn't OP. It didn't need the capacity reduction. Give it its capacity back. It's fine. Slugger, put its damage back. Give it its stun back. I think this thing, the Slugger should stun a bit less than the Plasma Punisher, but it should do more damage. This thing needs to hit higher. There's no point, like, I'd run the Punisher over this any day, because the Punisher stuns better. It does the same damage. The only difference is this has more capacity, but the Plasma Punisher does AoE, which is kind of more worth it. Yeah. Give this, like, what, 350 damage? The fact that this, in full auto, does more damage than this still bugs me. Give this 350. This should be hitting higher than all of these automatic shotguns, 100%. That's the way I see it. It's good, but it's just not, it's not quite there. It just doesn't make sense to use this over, like, this shotgun, or this shotgun at the moment. Or the Plasma Punisher. This Punisher, though, yeah, it's pretty good. I can't really say anything negative about it. I will say this, though. Given that this does 405, and I know it's firing the same shotgun shells, so for realism purposes, yeah, it makes sense. But this is a primary weapon. This should hit more than the Bushwhacker, in my opinion. It should hit a bit harder. This should be hitting like 500 at close range. I think at that point you really make a good argument for using this over this. Because I can fire 2 shots from this for every 1 of that. So I'm kind of doing like 660 damage with this. And yeah, sure, I might run out of ammo faster. But this thing's just going to kill things faster. And then I don't mind backing off to reload to then kill more things. So I think, yeah, this should maybe hit like 500. Or you could even put it up to 600 just to bring it in line with this, given that this has such a high fire rate. And if you do up the capacity, I think you'd have to bump this to 600. You could make its range slightly less to balance it. So give it slightly less range, bump it up to 600. I think this weapon goes into like high A S tier at that point. It would be like your premier C. This should be your premier CQC weapon. When things are right up in your face, this should be one tap in everything, no trouble. I think you should one tap stalkers at like super close range with a headshot if you hit enough pellets. Definitely should be 2-shotting them. Yeah, it's good, but I think if you take all the other suggestions so far that I've given, this would need a little bit of a buff. Again, just make the damage drop off substantially after maybe like 10 meters, and it's fine. Like if you make this at like 200 damage past 10 meters, then it kind of starts to work. That's the other idea I had, actually, just going back to this really quickly. Laser weapons, I think the closer an enemy gets, the higher the damage should be. So it should have a like it should be doing 350 damage at least, right? Let's say that's the least damage it does, and then maybe 550 damage a second when a monster is like a bug or a robot is right. I keep saying monster, I'm a monster hunter. When there's a bug right up in your face, it should be doing higher DPS, in my opinion. So think of it like just like a beam in general. A beam, like the more, you know when you shine a laser, the further away the laser gets, the more dispersed it is, the less concentrated it is. Put that element into the gameplay for these weapons. Make it so that when the enemy gets right up in your face, it does 550 damage per second. Otherwise, it does 350. I think at that point, it becomes really cool as a bug weapon as well, because the thing that this thing lacks is whenever you get overwhelmed in CQC, it's no good. Like, it starts to fall out. At range, it's fine, but once things get close to you, it gets really, really bad. And that's a problem for most people when using it, because most bugs are up in your face, especially with the way hunters are all the time. So you really need something that performs a little bit better when it's closer. And I think if you make it so that this thing's damage increases based on distance, that gets kind of interesting. I think that would make this thing a choice for a lot of people, because then you can quickly dispatch enemies that are in CQC against you. How you doing, Claudan? Hope you're having yourself a lovely, jubbly day today. The Pamela, what can I say about this? It was pretty cool for a time. They have nerfed it because they buffed the stun resistance of a lot of things. Up its stun? Like, yeah. I think you could bring up its damage maybe to like... I think this should have 75 damage, and I think this should have 80. And then this should have 70 damage, right? That's kind of the way I think it should be at the moment. So what did I say? Like, yeah. This should be like 75, 80 damage. Maybe bump this up to 90. This should have 70 damage. And the reason why is because I think you should buff all the assault rifles as well. These should just be assault rifles that you can use with the shield that are a little bit weaker than the assault rifle counterparts. Obviously, allow you to hold it with the objective as well. That's kind of where I want these things to sit personally. You know how I feel like this. 200 damage. Give this thing 200 damage. Maybe even 210. Give this like 175. This thing is... I hate this thing. I hate this thing. I was using it yesterday and I just thought, it takes so many bullets to kill something with like headshots. And even if you're sniping out the weak points, it just still feels like it takes way too many bullets. You get 20, which is a lot, but nah, this thing needs to hit like 175, I think. You put this at 175, you put this at like 210. Damn, these things are... Then they become like proper a sniper and a marksman rifle. I know they're both technically marksman rifles. I feel like this should be treated more as a semi-auto sniper, because you've got the bolt action sniper, right? But this thing needs to do a bit more damage. Again, this doesn't kill Devastators in one shot. It needs to kill Devastators in one shot, in my opinion. It just has to.
Otherwise, yeah, it's too slow under pressure. On the bugs, it's a little bit better at the moment, but again, I wouldn't bring it over. I wouldn't bring it over this. This is still the better choice, but it could be better. I still think this could hit 200. I don't think it's going to make it OP because it's a certain playstyle. It's got limited capacity. You got to reload it. You could even, if you gave it 200 damage, you can even up the reload a little bit if you wanted to, just to kind of help balance it out a bit. Yeah, this thing has to hit more though. This needs a 175. 210, 175. Assault rifles, tenderizer should now be the template for all of them. I think. I'm actually liking the tenderizer. I've been using it a lot. It's not great. It's almost great. But I gave my thoughts on these yesterday. I'll kind of quickly summarize what I said. You bump the damage of this one to like 100 or 110. Let's put this at 110, right? Because it's almost there. It's like almost perfect. 110 damage. You put the capacity at 45. Alright? And you may be like, but then that's going to be so OP, Twas. Hear me out. It won't be OP. It will be as good as options such as Incendiary Breaker, Dominator, Crossbow. You're kind of bringing it in line, Scorcher, with these weapons, okay? My design ethos is bring everything in line with the strongest things available currently in the game, right? It's almost there. It's very close. Like I said, 110 damage, 45 capacity. Now, why 45 capacity? All of the assault rifles suffer from the issue of their capacity being, like, a bit on the low side. So I think we bump the capacity on all of them. And I'll tell you how much for each one as we go through. But yeah, damage 110, capacity 45. Damage 140. This should have the damage that this has. Capacity 40. Okay? Or you could do 35. Something like that. Damage 140, capacity, let's say 35. Because this has 45, this gets 35. This should be the heaviest hitting, slow firing, high recoil assault rifle. That's why I said buff this to 200. Because then this thing is like an automatic version of what this is. Which would be freaking amazing. That would be so cool. But obviously it's got heavier recoil. And is harder to control. So it's not as accurate as this, but it is it's heavy hitting. So at CQC, maybe medium range, this thing starts to see some use. This thing's like slightly obviously the fire rate on this, you keep it slow. Maybe even reduce the fire rate to 500 if you're going to do that. And then this thing, because it's got a higher fire rate, it does slightly less damage. So if this does 140, this does 110. But it has a bigger magazine and higher fire rate to make up for it. Then you've got this. You bump the capacity up to 70. Yes, 70. Why? Because I think you put the damage at like 80? Maybe 90? Do something like that. So this one's like almost like a pseudo SMG, but not an SMG, right? It's a carbine, so it is kind of like, it's in between an SMG and assault rifle. I think the stats should reflect that. It should do less damage than what this thing does currently because the fire rate is just immense. But it needs a bigger mag. Like, give it a 70 mag so you can actually kind of utilize it. Because at the moment, the issue with this gun is it doesn't do enough damage and you go through that ammo way too fast. But it has a lot of potential. So if you make it do like 80, 85... If this thing's hitting 110, you give it a 70 mag, it becomes great. Again, depending on what you want out of the assault rifle. I think the assault rifle should be... Each one of them should be equally good in a different scenario versus different enemies. And I think that would do it because that way this thing kind of becomes the best if you're on a hunter planet with loads of hunters and small enemies and no bile spewers and things. This becomes the best. Then if you've got loads of bile spewers and not a lot of small enemies, this thing becomes better. Then if you're kind of like a mixed planet, this one becomes more viable. If you're on a planet with a lot of shielded enemies, this when we get onto this would become the best. So you give this like 100 damage, maybe 120, maybe even 130 given the fire rate, right? Bump the capacity up to, this should have 45. This is where we get into like maybe 40. So bump this up a little bit, make it different from this because I said 45 for this. So maybe we have 40 on this. The recoil fire rate's fine, the explosive damage is fine. But up the damage, like, and up the explosive damage. Make it so that it actually does some decent explosive damage. This thing helps you control, like, shielded enemies. That's the way I think it. Liberator, Penetrator. I mean, damn, this is like one of the weakest guns in the game at the moment. Capacity should be 60. 60 for this. This is 70. This should be 60. And the stats are okay. The damage, I think if you bump this to 60, put the damage up to maybe 90. You could even have it on the old damage stats of this. That might be a little bit too OP. You go 90, 85, somewhere in that region for the penetrator, because it does pen medium armor. So you can't have it as higher damage as, say, like what I suggested for this. What did I say for this? Like 80, 85? Maybe you could put it at like the same, because this thing's going to have a bigger mag. And a much higher fire rate. Yeah, I think that would be okay then. And then obviously, like I said, this thing's got like a smaller mag and much more damage. Because I think this thing should hit 140. And then for this, it's got to hit more than this. So this is doing 90 damage a shot. This thing needs to do... it's got to do slightly less than this. What did I say for this? 110? Make this 100. There you go. 100 damage. Nice round number. Capacity, again, put it at 60. Could even put it at... could even put it at 65. So this has 70. This has 65. This has 60. Just to help differentiate it, make it feel a little bit more, a little bit different. The fire rate's fine. I think the recoil's fine. Just make it 100 damage. At that point, I think every assault rifle has a reason to use. You have trade-offs and benefits to each one of them. This one is going to be like the jack of all trades, master of none, the flat line, but it should still be good at 100 damage. At the moment at 60, I don't think this is good enough for most encounters. Beyond like difficulty 7, this thing really starts to struggle. And again, I'm always saying balance things around the highest difficulty, everything else will follow. But that's my thoughts on the primary weapons. Secondary weapons, it's a little bit different. Bushwhacker I think is pretty perfect. Like I said, if you buff the main pump action shotgun, just because this thing's really cool as a secondary, I do feel like the primary should be doing more than this. But at the moment, I don't feel any reason to run the primary pump action shotgun, because I don't mind reloading this 3 times. I go... And it does the same damage. It's really freaking good. Base pistol. Yeah, bring the damage up. If you're bringing the damage up on the Liberator to 100, you can make this like 90. I do feel like this needs to have more mags. Maybe that's it. Like the stats on this are great. It just needs... Let the player carry like a couple of extra mags. Because this thing's really falling behind on ammo economy compared to some of these other sidearms. It's brilliant though. This thing... I said what? It should behave in the same way as the primary las weapon. So the closer an enemy gets, the higher the damage gets. So bump it to 250 damage, I think, standard. And then make it so that when enemies get up close, it goes up to like 400 in CQC. Then this thing kind of gets really cool as a secondary. And then give it 1 reload. 1. So if you're using this, you've really got to control the laser. Does it actually already have 1 reload? I can't remember. Maybe it does. It might have 2. I actually forget how many reloads this thing has. But make sure it has 1. Just so that it's like, yeah, because it should be really good when enemies get up close. As to like switch to in a panic mode if you run out of ammo. But at the moment it isn't. It's completely useless. It is the worst secondary in the game currently. And I'd like to see it, but like the way lasers behaves change very slightly. This doesn't need any changes. It's perfect. If anything, the 650 damage that this has should dictate how much damage the automatic grenade launcher does. The automatic grenade launcher should be an automatic version of the grenades that this is firing. But it only does 450, which is fine, but like, why not more? Why not make it hit 650? That way the automatic grenade launcher can one-tap bile spewers more consistently. It can one-tap them, but it's... That little bit of extra damage just makes it a bit more consistent based on their hit zones. I do like the verdict. I do like it. For me, this is perfect. If you buff this to make this good, you have to buff this by proxy, which I'm not sure how I like the idea of that, because I do actually think this is really freaking good. The question I ask in my head is, if I'm rebalancing this, if I give this 200 damage a shot, and then I bump this to 150, or maybe 160, 165. That if this was if this had 175, this would be freaking OP, right? This would be way too good. So you can't give it 175. But if you do bring this up to like 150, this immediately becomes better than this. So you've got another issue there. I do feel like this needs a little bit of a rework to get some use. It's got a good fire rate. Maybe you up the recoil, bring the damage to 150 so it gets more recoil. So you have to control it a bit more. And then you could buff this to 200. But this doesn't... It's not that this needs a buff. It's just like if you buff this, you kind of need to buff this. This is a really good sidearm though. I love this thing. It doesn't need more. But I don't think at 200 it's going to be OP. I think it just fulfills its role a little bit better. I think it does make it a bit more effective against Devastators on the bot front, which is a good thing. Means you can pull it out and more consistently, like, 2-tap them. You know, when you're trying to finish them off. Yeah, sure, why not? Let's say we'll bump that to 200 and then put that to 150. Then you really start getting... Time to kill starts to come down. I do feel like this should be heavy hitting anyway. Bushwhacker's great. Throwable weapons. What could we do to this? Okay, so... Looking at, like, the standard throwables, the high explosive needs to do more damage. The fact that the impact does 400 and this does 400, the impact's just better in every... Like, why would I ever bring that? The high explosive, I think, should hit, like, 600. Just to compensate. It's got a long fuse, long timer, takes a long time to go off. This should be the heaviest hitting grenade in terms of, like, direct damage. So bump this up to 600 or 650, the same as the handheld grenade pistol. Regular frag, I think you could probably bring that up to like maybe 300. There's no reason for it to do that much less than this. Not really. I think that would be okay. Incendiary, it's fine. It's just a fused version of this. See, that does 150, that does 150. Maybe you could up the damage on this a little bit. Just because it isn't impact, and impact, like the ability to just hit things directly is really huge. You could probably bump that to 200. I think that would be fine. Stun grenades are perfect. Knives, yeah, these need to be able to do melee when you're holding them. So you can press R3 and attack with them. Wow. You know, proper shank things. And the throw, you need to be able to pick them up again. I'd even up the damage on them a bit, because whenever you're using these, you are sacrificing all of your AoE damage for direct damage. So I wouldn't even mind if these hit like 400 damage a throw, which may sound crazy to some of you guys, but like, dude, this is hitting 400. Like, if I throw a grenade, I'm doing more damage than the throwing knife. Why should this not hit like higher than this? I think it should. This should be hitting really hard. It should be single target removal. It should be like, if I throw a knife at like a commander's head, I one-tap it. That sounds crazy to some of you guys, but you got thermite. Like, thermite, it's, you know, you get that, you throw it, it's gonna... 2 of these kills are freaking Hulk. I don't think this should kill Hulks. I don't think it should kill tanks. I think it should definitely be something that is reserved for like Devastators and regular bots. And on the bug front, you know, commanders and below. Things like stalkers. Maybe 2-shot stalkers. I think that would be really interesting. Yeah. That's where I feel like this should be. Smoke grenades are fine. I think they'll probably get some more utility when we get more missions that actually you need smoke on. But they do their job well enough. They're perfectly fine. But that's kind of where I stand with all of these weapons. I am actually going to very quickly go through the stratagem weapons as well, because I didn't go through them in my other video. So, starting off with the machine gun, absolutely perfect. Doesn't need to change anything. The buffs that it's had to it, absolutely brilliant. Like, one of the best things you can possibly get at the moment. For the bugs, it's decent on the bots too. I think the heavy machine gun slightly outclasses it on the bots, only because it can take out some enemies that this thing can't deal with, but it's brilliant. I think this is kind of like your bread and butter support weapon. It should be the first thing that you get, the thing that you use. You can't really go wrong with it. It's in a great place. Anti-material rifle's amazing as well. At the moment, on the bots especially, it does brilliantly well. I love it. It's great. It can kill and deal with basically anything. It'll one-tap things. It'll two-tap things. It's fantastic. I love this thing. It's balanced. It doesn't need any changes. It's one of the reasons why I haven't really gone over support weapons. I think for the most part, they're pretty well balanced. Stalwart, it's a nice alternative to the machine gun if you're not dealing with like the heavier enemies and just using it on the chaff. I think when the eruptor gets fixed and starts being good for like big enemies and single target removal, again, the Stalwart will become your primary. essentially. You can reload it on the move, which is a huge benefit over the machine gun, and it tears through small enemies. It's in a good spot. Overlooked by a lot of people, but again, if you've got a slower firing utility primary, and even a slower firing utility secondary, this becomes your primary, and it is debatably the best primary in the freaking game. So yeah, pretty freaking cool. Expendable anti-tanks, perfect. I would like to see these things do a bit more damage to the charger beam-offs though. That's the one thing I'll say about these. It's a bit ridiculous that I can fire 2 of these at a charger beam-off leg and not kill it. Like, it's anti-tank. Let it do its job. On the bots, it's fine. It does what it needs to do. But on the bugs at the moment, it's a bit silly just because of the charger beam-offs. Recoilless rifle. They actually fixed this in the patch the other day. It's got the fast reload again. It's solid. Can't complain. If you're kind of on your own and you're not wanting to deal with constantly calling in expendable anti-tanks, then this is the thing to go for. Yeah, it's no fuss. If you're accurate with this, it will be accurate with his kills. It's decent. No fuss. Simple to use. I like it. Doesn't need a buff. You could maybe buff its damage again, but it doesn't suffer from the same issue as this because you have more shots. But yeah, if you wanted to buff it so that it could 2-tap charger beam-offs in the head, I think that would be fine. But I think you can still 2-tap charger beam-offs. Regular chargers, it'll 1-tap. Maybe it's just a bit of inconsistency at the moment, but it was good. So yeah, flamethrower, goddamn, best weapon on the bugs. Completely useless on the bots in my opinion, but it is like the best CQC weapon on the bugs. And because of the volume of chargers currently in the game, as of this most recent patch, it absolutely excels because chargers just push on you. They're always up in your face. This thing gets them out your face and it gets them out quick. Love it. Don't rebalance it. Don't change it, please. This should be, again, just like the machine gun. It's kind of on the level of the machine gun. The machine gun obviously deals with the smaller enemies better than the flamethrower at range. But that's how I think anti-horde weapons should be. They should be able to deal with the small enemies in their given range the best that they possibly can. Autocannon is your... what's the best way of putting it? It's just your Stanley knife. It's just so reliable. It's okay on the bugs. It's worse now with the chargers being the way they are. But on the bots, it's fantastic, obviously. I think this thing will make a comeback on the bugs. I think they just need to work out how this thing hits charger beam-offs. I think this thing, maybe 5 shots, you should be able to take out charger leg armor. Stop having it deflect on the leg armor. I think at that point, this thing, you kind of solve the problem with charger beam-offs in the autocannon. That's what I would do. I don't think it needs a damage increase. I think it just needs a utility change. Because it's perfect on the bots. It doesn't need any change for the bots. It'll take out anything, and I love that. Heavy machine gun, it's really freaking good. On the bots, I actually think it's better than the regular machine gun. On the bugs, not as much, but you can totally use this thing on the bugs, and it will tear through them. It's just because the other thing has 150 ammo, and the time to kill is basically the same, so... Yeah, but on the bots, this thing's king. I mean, dude, takes out dropships, takes out hulks. If you bring stun grenades, it's just an easy kill on most anything. Absolutely bloody brilliant. Airburst launcher is a bit of an odd one. It's one of the few weapons where I think it could maybe do a bit more damage. It's probably one of the only weapons. Because it doesn't see use over other rocket launchers because it can't deal with the heavies. And I don't really want an anti-horde rocket launcher on most missions. There's a couple of missions where this stands out as being good. Ones where you have fixed bug breaches, you know, like the defense mission where you have to let the 8 rockets launch. Then it's really good on that mission, but... And you know your team's not going to push out of the gate as well, so you can hold the gates really well. But other than that mission, this thing's... it doesn't particularly excel on the other types of missions, because, you know, obviously there's the risk of team kill, which... Skill issue at the end of the day, but, yeah, it's fine. I don't know exactly what you do to it. Like I said, maybe up the damage. Maybe give it like some direct damage as well. So if you can hit a beam-off or a Bile Titan with it, it actually does a little bit of direct damage. Just because at the moment it's... I get that it's not meant for direct damage, but it's basically like a mini cluster bomb. And cluster bombs don't deal with Bile Titans and chargers. So yeah, it's fine. It fills a niche. And it fills that niche really well. But it's something that you only use on certain missions. And for horde clearing, I would bring this over it. I would probably bring... Well, I'm definitely going to bring this over it. I'd bring this over it. And I'd bring this over it. I'd bring the arc thrower too. So, yeah. Spear, incredible. perfect. The fact that the lock-on works now. My only suggestion for rebalancing this at the moment is one thing I would change. One small thing. Allow me to switch fire mode so I can have a straight fire. So it doesn't go up like the javelin, okay? Because you know javelin in real life, you can fire it horizontal as well as vertical fire. So I think you could even give it 3 fire modes. You could have a really high vertical one, a mid one like what it's got now, and then give it a sort of just a straight fire. So a lock on and it goes straight. Just give me that option. It adds a little bit of skill-based usage to this because not every scenario you're going to want vertical fire. Yeah, that's the only thing it needs. The damage is perfect. The amount of ammo is perfect. Works really good. I like the team play with it. It's decent. We'll get onto the other ones real quick. I have mentioned these in my previous video. I didn't mean to. I was going to save them for this one, but we'll go over them again. Grenade launcher. It's good. I just really don't like... My one gripe with this is that I have to run a supply pack to make it work. And I feel like every weapon that needs a pack to work should have just given me the pack with the weapon to begin with, right? I don't... Like, using 2 stratagem slots to make this thing good is not good because I'm sacrificing a stratagem slot. For example, perfect example. I don't... Imagine if the autocannon didn't come with its little ammo backpack and you had to run a resupply backpack to get ammo back for it. Would you still run it? You probably wouldn't run it as much. The grenade launcher needs like a change. Either you give it a fixed backpack of grenade rounds that it comes with, or you give it an extra chain of grenades that your Helldiver can carry, and maybe give it a couple of extra shots in the thing. It's really good, but I don't like having to run supply pack just to make it decent. I should be able to run this thing with any backpack I want at that rate, and it still be, you know, not have the ammo issue. So I think sort this thing's ammo out, it becomes one of the best. At the moment, the flamethrower, the heavy machine gun, the light machine gun, I think all outclass it for anti-horde. The only thing this has going for it is clearing bug holes, and I got the grenade pistol for that, and I've also got the crossbow for that. So yeah, and I'd rather bring them in a better support weapon personally. You can even do it with the eruptor, I mean, if you're so inclined. Laser cannon, exactly what I said about the other laser weapons. Make it so that its damage increases the closer enemies get. It should have an exponential damage increase the closer they get. So I don't know what the actual damage value is for this thing, but give it up to a 30-40% damage increase the closer the enemy gets to you. So as you see here, like all of these things, it's doing really nice damage at range. As they push up real close to you, they should be getting more and more damage done to them because your laser's not having to travel as far. It's losing less of its energy density, right? So it should be doing more damage. That's the way I see it. It's good though. It's good as it is. It just needs to be hitting harder when things get closer. That's how I would improve it. Arc thrower. I love this thing. It's my guilty pleasure, but the arc doesn't work properly at the moment. So as I said in the other video yesterday, just let it arc better. Just let it arc a little bit better. Get the arc working and I'll be happy. I think that's all you really need to do. Yeah, it gets caught up on grass. It gets caught up on bodies. It gets caught up when an enemy's right up in your face and it doesn't fire anything. If it doesn't do that anymore, I think everyone else is going to realize just how freaking good this weapon is. You also need to make it work on charger behemoths, because that's a huge indirect nerf that this thing got, is it can't get charger behemoths. The fact that it already takes 5 headshots to kill a regular charger, and you've got to be super accurate with a weapon that doesn't go where you want to fire it, that's hard enough already. The charger behemoth, I think, is even more, and the target is tiny and you can't really hit it very well. So I think this thing maybe needs a rework on chargers, because otherwise, why would you ever bring this over the flamethrower? The only reason you bring this over the flamethrower is it's got that medium range kill potential that the flamethrower doesn't have, but it needs to be able to hit chargers. Like, that's really important. Make that a buff. I don't know why lightning weapons can't be used on chargers. I think they should be able to, and you've got yourself a winner here. On the bot front, I don't really like this thing. I've used it a couple of times, just because it doesn't have the range, really. The engagement range is a bit longer. It used to, but then they nerfed the range. You could maybe bring that range back. I think the range was cool on this thing. So, yeah, consider bringing the range back. Quasar Cannon, it's great. I like the fact that this is more effective on some planets over others. I think that's a really cool niche thing that this thing does specifically. The fact that you get that extra fast cooldown on cold planets, it means that this thing is better than bringing a recoilless on the cooler planets, but it's worse than the recoilless on the hot planets. So it gives you a reason to change your anti-tank options based on what the planetary conditions are like, and I think that's really cool. I think that's a really nice mechanic. The thing's satisfying to use. It's good. Decent damage. I think it's maybe lost a bit of its power since we got the charger BM-offs in, because you can't one-shot them. Should this thing be able to one-shot charger BM-offs? I don't know. I'll let you guys decide that. If you think it needs more damage, I wouldn't disagree with you, but I don't think it's 100% necessary. Are there any other weapons? I think I've gone over all of them. Yeah, I think that's every weapon in the game and how I feel about them currently. So, yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Leave a like. Hopefully you enjoyed my take on this little bit of Helldivers. Come check us out. We stream live on Twitch, Mondays to Friday. See ya.